All right, this is episode 59 of the CROM Update Podcast, and today I'm joined for the first time by RJ Shaw. RJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm really happy to show off my book that's coming out, Crom the Destroyer.
I think I'm more excited than you. I have to just go from the beginning. Um, I've been working on my own CROM version for quite a while, but what I have is an email notification in my calendar like once a month to just Google search CROM. And Crom the Destroyer came up. I believe it was unfortunately after the Indiegogo, was up and live, so I was not able to participate in that part. But have been following along, and then as I've gotten over into this CROM universe, CROMthebarbarian.com and all this CROM Anthology stuff, been reaching out to other CROM creators to just get them to talk about their CROM. So I'm not going to keep going. Can you share a little bit about yourself and then why CROM?
Well, I've been doing YouTube videos on my channel, The Fourth Age, for about 7 years now, lamenting what has happened basically to comics and graphic novels, because I'm an 80s guy. I think that's pretty much the height of comic goodness right there. And I decided to delve into developing comics. I'm the writer and the producer, and I had a lot of people coming to me saying, I want to be a part of a project with you, a lot of good artists. So we did 2 books. First off, 2 superhero books. One was Thomas Valiant, and the other was The Valiant Heroes. And then I decided to do Crom the Destroyer because I've always liked Robert E. Howard stories and Conan-like stories, and I really wanted to do that kind of a story. And I found that, quite honestly, I think that Robert E. Howard and I probably had the same books read to us when we were kids. Funny enough, it was because I'm very much into Celtic mythology,
Right.
and those are the kinds of things. Basically, I don't know if it was Lady Gregory. I think it might be, but it's a compilation of Celtic myths. It's a big tome, and was written like probably the mid 1800s. So that's why he would have access to it when he was a kid too.
Yeah.
But those things I just read over and over and over again as a kid. So very much, because CROM is a Celtic myth, so it plays into the Robert E. Howard mythology and his Conan and a lot of his stories. But I found that I wanted to create a Conan-like character, but more going back to the Celtic myth story. So I combined a lot of characters together from the Celtic myth. Some people like Lua the Longhand and Connor Moore and Oisin, son of Fian. And I wanted to take those characters and to meld them into one and write a story in the vein of a Robert E. Howard story. And Crom the Destroyer is the product of that. And it is the journey of this man who has no name at first. We simply call him King throughout the book, until he gets very much tied up with CROM, and it becomes the symbol of CROM within the last few pages of the book.
Nice. So I have been diving into the whole, let's say, origin of CROM. Do you pronounce it Cruach? Is that how you like the god, the fertility, the
I couldn't say off the
sacrificing?
top of my head. There's a lot of different Celtic pronunciations, actually.
Yeah. So I just don't want anybody out there to get mad at me. If you are mad at me, then correct me in the comments below. But I always say Crom Cruach. I personally am taking my journey of Crom from silly comic book character made in the 1950s all the way up to the god Crom that Conan the Barbarian, swears to. I don't like using the whole prayer thing. Are you dealing with that deity sense of Crom, or just sort of just using the name and the obvious world, the wealth of world building surrounding him?
I'm doing both at the same time.
Oh yeah. Can you let anything out in the way of like connection to
Well,
the fertility god, or we got to wait for the comic?
the comic again, it is this man who well swears to Crom, and is a king, and at the end it's a sort of kind of like the scene in the Conan the Barbarian movie. At one point he curses Crom, and at the same time gets cursed by Crom. So
Oh, okay, cool, very cool. Okay, all right. Um, so then you went to the Indiegogo part. Oh, this is black and white. To Indiegogo. Do you want to talk about running an Indiegogo campaign? Not only just for Crom, but just for you know funding and fulfillment of comic book projects.
Well, I have to say, if anybody wants to go over to Crom the Destroyer, it is still open on Indiegogo. We are, and I'll have to say this right off the bat so everybody knows, we are very far behind in the production. This should have been, the book should have come out last year. But I had an artist, beautiful artist, for the first couple of pages, which you're looking at right now, Jim O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Jim has gone through a lot of personal issues over the last year since he started the book, and I had to get another artist to finish the book, which you have some pages in the background from Nick Axe. So I wanted to give Jim as much grace period as I could to see if he could finish, right. But he wasn't able to. So I had to employ Nick because I didn't want to rob my backers of the spectacular art that Jim had to go down in any way. So I picked Nick to do the rest of the pages because Nick's is just as beautiful as the first pages that Jim produced. And those first pages, you can read the first, I think, 10 to 12 on the Indiegogo campaign, which are lettered, although the lettering is not final. It's just me throwing up the lettering so you can read some of the story. And so we did that, and so the campaign is we're still working on the art. We're almost done. We're at the last chapter right now. The climax of the story. My artist Nick Axe is working on it, but we have the cover done. You were just showing the cover. But running an Indiegogo campaign in itself, this is CROM was the third Indiegogo campaign I had, actually fourth, had done. And I also did a Kickstarter just to see if I could get anything over in Kickstarter. And I know there's other platforms like Fund My Comic, but I've been sticking with, I didn't know if I was going to stick with Indiegogo or not, but they've actually contacted me for my new campaign, which is Fade to Blue, which is set in the 1920s. And it's a film noir, sort of meets Indiana Jones kind of story. They contacted me to help me with that. And actually, my first campaign did extremely well. We hit with private backers, we hit about 70,000 for that first book. And we just went on from there. I used that money to fund the Valiant Heroes and Crom the Destroyer. And so I found that there is a very large market for fantasy out there right now, but at the same time, with the economy and the way that it is, a lot of people are looking at the price of the book, which is fairly hefty. It is $25 US because it is 80 pages plus. So you can either get it as a comic, which is fully inked and colored, or you can get it as a art piece, which is the magazine, which magazine size, same as what would normally be sort of the old Savage Sword of Conan. Those are black and white, so you can see the pencils, and they're just going to be pure pencils, and you can read it that way as well. Also, with the Indiegogo campaign, I also have standalone stories that I've written, just pure text stories in a Robert E. Howard vein. Those are stories which occur within the pages of the graphic novel itself, but they're not integral to the story. They're basically side quests that he went on when he was going through basically between chapters or things like that. So there's a lot there. We have a map. We have oversized cards for some of our characters, basically oversized because they're the size of a comic book cover. And a lot of fun, good things that you can order with the campaign. And it's just a pleasure, and pleasure not only to work with these artists because of the level of art that they're giving me is spectacular. I honestly believe this is going to be one of the best, if not the best, say Conan vein stories when it comes out because of the art. It's just so beautiful. But yeah, just having fun, and it's a dream come true having to produce something that is in the vein of Conan the Barbarian. And honestly, also as well, I should mention that the inker that is working on it, the first couple of pages that has done it, is Mike Gustovich. He actually worked for Marvel Comics and did Conan the Barbarian under Conan the King.
Oh wow! Now there's that's super cool. The I got two questions, but just going in a little deeper on how you use Indiegogo. It appears to me, so a lot of these questions are just what have come up, in skirting around, in and around Crom the Destroyer, the Indiegogo. Are you using that platform as like the shop for, or do you, let's say once you hit fulfillment, do you end up putting it on your website?
No, for now, it is the shop for Crom the Destroyer.
Okay.
We will probably put up a website at some point, but right now, Crom is a bit of a bit odd within the stuff that I do, because the other superhero comic books that I do, I usually take the Indiegogo campaigns down for the ones that are completed, and then you can only get them as an add-on to new campaigns. But with Crom the Destroyer, I'm not sure I can do that because, well, you can. It's a bit of an odd book as compared to the other superhero books. So we might be setting up a separate website itself just for the books when I accumulate, more and more, because we're doing a lot of different things now. Fade to Blue is going to be exclusively digital for now, maybe 5 years or so. When we keep on adding additions to it, we might print, but I'm trying to get as many formats down as possible, so that may change in the future is basically what I'm saying. So I got Thomas Valiant #1, which is a graphic novel, 85 pages. The Valiant Heroes, which is 3 compilation stories, which you can get as a full graphic novel or 3 floppies. Crom the Destroyer, which is 80 pages plus. We're about to put out Fade to Blue. Thomas Valiant #2 will be coming later this year, and I also have a manga style book coming out, which is Artemis, which I have artists in Japan working on right now.
Man, busy. So for clarity, this is Nick, right?
Yep.
And then this is Jim?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So I just want to thank Nick, if he ends up watching this. He was the one that actually put me in contact with you, because I was not finding directly how to get a hold of you, or I had sent. I'm kind of remembering that I might have sent a web form through maybe the website or something like that. But the major reason I wanted to have you on and talk CROM is I'm hoping, and RJ, this is in no way to corner you or make you agree on something, but I'm working on a CROM Anthology, and portions of CROM Anthology do 2 things. The first thing is to show like a 2-page gallery spread on an artist who's working in the CROM sword and sorcery fantasy realm. So Jim and Nick, or just the pages, the artist, that would be something I'd like to offer. But I'm hoping that we could put something together in the way of a teaser inside CROM Anthology, whether it was 1 or #2, where, let's say first 7 pages or 7 pages to get people teased up, and then a QR code on an 8th page explaining, how to get more of that. Is that something that you would be interested in?
Yes, indeed. We actually did something like that already with this book, because one of the print stories, which had some art going along with it, already got published in Iron Age, which is a compilation magazine, and they printed the entire story with some of the art, which you can also buy through the Indiegogo page, because Iron Age Anvil is the magazine, which again is a compilation magazine of fantasy and science fiction. So it's already been printed, some of it, but again, those are probably out of print now. But yeah, we've done this before, and it's a great way to promote the book.
Yes. It's the one thing I find as the struggle in being a sword and sorcery fan, comic book wise, and even for the pros. it's just no sort of central hub. I'm not saying that Crom the Barbarian is going to become that hub yet. I'm hoping it can definitely become like a landing page and then a jumping off page. So, I was just doing an interview with Ron Parsons, who's a writer working with two fantastic artists, and I was bringing up the old, and I know you as an old guy are going to remember this, but before social media and even Tumblr, if you had a website, which is what you had to have if you were doing anything professional, arts or other related, you would have a banner link exchange page. Do you remember that, RJ?
Yes.
So that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to bring back, is that if there's something out there in the way of sword and sorcery, CROM specific or not, even fantasy, edgy fantasy, um, then, there's a way to kind of keep moving along, because I used to like that. I would kind of click one link and go to another website, and then, oh wow, check that out, and then go there, and it would all stay contained instead of scrolling through some social media platform where then your attention gets picked off, one by one into other ways.
Remember, reminds me, I'm not entirely sure if this is what you're referring to, but e-rings or e-circles, basically.
Yes,
So
yes, there was a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, there were things, we could go on, but I don't think it was going to be that interesting because it's long dead. But I am so happy to hear, the possibility of down the road CromTheDestroyer.com coming into, because I'm a big supporter of identifying yourself creatively first through a website, not through an Indiegogo campaign, or, and one of it is actually through it's the complexity that can kind of come into just being able to contact individuals that is associated with, whatever's going on that Indiegogo or Kickstarter campaign or something to that extent. But so that's, really awesome to hear and everything. Yeah, no, I am. I really want to know more and more about Crom the Destroyer. my head keeps going into that place, because there's um, I can't say history. It's more like mythology. I guess that is the best way to, because Crom was actually a deity. And one of the things, if you would like to dance with me on this, is that I play under the notion that any deity out there was once some human or group of humans that acted that way, and over verbalizing and storytelling around the campfire, it amalgamates. Do you find the same with thinking, especially in this kind of tradition of storytelling?
it would very much fit with Celtic mythology if that was the case,
Right?
because Celtic mythology and the format that mythology developed in storytelling is very much. I always compare it to, if you know the Book of Kells and you see the knots, the intricate knots that are drawn in the Book of
Yeah,
Kells.
yeah,
That's the way the stories are actually, when you read them in their original format. That's the way the stories actually go. They bend and twist and turn into a
yes,
format that nobody is really familiar with when you're looking at modern stories. So you start with usually a character, and you might think, I'm going to follow this character all the way through, and you don't. It goes to a side character, and then to another side character, and then to another side character, and you follow a chain of events, or you bend and twist with the forest and the trees and the looping together of those things, which is very much the mindset of a Celt who's living in ancient Ireland and England as well at the same time,
yeah.
and Scotland, because that's dense forest was their home. That's where they lived. So I find that Celtic mythology is severely and influenced by the natural progression of the world that they could see around them. And so I would indeed think that the verbal communication of those stories would follow the same pattern.
Yeah, I just watched one of these old BBC documentaries on Beowulf, and it was with Michael Woods, um, and that's that same type of we always get Hollywood versions of these characters first. Unless you were lucky enough in grade school, maybe even high school, excuse me, to have a teacher that would put something in front of you that you would then, like the Book of Celts or something that, would be like Robert E. Howard had. And then your imagination ignites and works off of it. It's almost, I find the majority of content in the last 20 years that has fantasy tied to it, I usually then have to reverse engineer and deconstruct to get back to. It was like, Norseman. Did you get to see Norseman?
I haven't seen all of it, no.
Are you familiar with Amulet or Hamlet?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
So the point I'm making is I'm not either. I just found out that there was a character that ends up becoming Hamlet, King of the Danes, by Shakespeare. But there was an actual person who had this atrocity placed upon him, which was somebody came and killed his father, and it was his uncle, and he married his mother, and then said, he ran off and, had to circle back and everything to that. And I love that kind of stuff. That's just my point. And I found the movie to be well done, and of course leaning into that Conan the Barbarian movie, which is at the core of my sword and sorcery first meeting and stuff. So, all right. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share, RJ?
Well, just I like to think of this book. I just want to share a little bit about the book itself and the storyline. Again, Please. You can read the first 10 pages at least on the Indiegogo. But I honestly am a student and a lover of mythology. So the basic idea is it occurs within prehistory, stuff that we don't know, not as far back as Conan would go. But my thought was always more towards a mixture even of the Celtic mythology and more of a Greek mythology. Because if you go back, honestly, to some of the Celtic stories, they interact with the Greeks all the time. But it's funny, I like to think of being the story occurring in a world that's before, let's say, the time of Hercules, because you have Hercules who is trying to clean up the last of the monsters in his world. And I thought to myself, well, if you went back a little bit farther than Hercules, there might have been a whole lot more monsters in the world. So right. I thought I would set it in that sort of time frame, which very much I think ties in with the Celts and does have a hint of the old, Conan, Robert E. Howard way of looking at things and connecting to things. So there's a lot of that kind of, I don't know, we'll say vibe in this book, but I'm very much a sword and sandal kind of guy in the fact that I like to make it pretty pure in, I don't know, almost a Robert E. Howard way in my mind anyways, in the fact that, it's steel good, magic evil, warrior good, sorcerer evil. And that's the kind of story that I wanted to write. Very much something that Conan would fit right into, right? Just because he's always leery of, at the very least, magic and things like that. And that's why the story does feed into that mythological source at the end with CROM, because you have a character who's basically been through the ringer, through the gauntlet, and the god that he normally prays to is something that is getting in the way of his journey. And so I always focus on a traditional idea of hero. To me, quite honestly, the character of Conan the Barbarian, Robert E. Howard's Conan, is a hero. He ends up being a lawful good king. At the end, he will sacrifice himself for his people. He will allow himself to be tortured and everything else before he will give up his people to tyrants. So I always think of him as a hero in training, when he's younger and he becomes that lawful good king. And so I decided to not deconstruct, but to take that idea of a lawful good king and then to break him back down and to see if he has to become a barbarian once again because of the instances of his fate, I guess you would call it. Whether or not his dealings with CROM would be something that he values or that he curses. So that's a lot of why CROM comes into the book.
What's your core value for the sorcery element in CROM, your CROM?
It actually has a dual principle. My magic systems within it have a dual principle in the fact that there are two. We have one of the. Well, actually, you can see the top left-hand panel here. We have two sorcerers. One is on the right, up in the very top-hand corner, and the other's on the left. One deals with magic as basically undiscovered science. The other deals with magic as a conduit for the demonic. So we have those two things actually competing with each other at one point within the book, and it's very spectacular. It's the second book, one of the climaxes within the second book. So it's a spectacular visual.
Nice. All right. Well, I want to let you get going. Like I said, in the past with these episodes, these are only the first. I don't hold a checklist and say, "Oh, I interviewed RJ's Shaw. I don't have to do that again." It's quite the opposite. I look forward to being able to get with you again. I'd also like us to keep in contact with each other. As publications are releasing, and if there's any little support that can happen there, I think it's always a great thing. But on the way out, RJ, I'll give it over to you, and you can tell us where to go and how to get.
So you can get the book for Crom the Destroyer on Indiegogo. It is, well, hopefully there will be a link in the description. One of the things about Indiegogo is they try to give you a kick in the pants in that sometimes it doesn't always come up when you search for the Indiegogo campaign. So they like you to disseminate their information via your social media and things like that. So if you want to follow me on X, it's RJ of the Island, and I post all my links there and a lot of good Conan and fantasy stuff every day, almost, except for Sunday. And also I do have a YouTube channel, which is The Fourth Age, and I talk about comics, and the traditional idea of hero is really what my YouTube channel is centered around, although I pull in fantasy and comics into it a lot. So those are the three main sources where you can follow me. And again, I have other books as well that you can link off of Crom the Destroyer, superhero books, fantasy noir books and things like that. And I'm working with some spectacular artists, I must say. I have a lot of people that I talk to, like Don Chin, who used to do indie comics back in the 80s, and he did books like Enchanter and things like that, which is quite honestly, his artist got snatched up by Sandman at the time. And so, I have a lot of good connection to merit-based systems of creating comics, and hopefully Crom the Destroyer will be just another in a line of spectacular return to form for what graphic novels and comics should be.
Awesome. CromTheBarbarian.com. You can find out more about my version of Crom as it's being worked out. This is my first publication, which is 140 pages of black and white sword and sorcery goodness, illustrated prose. It's all in the soul and inspiration of Gardner Francis Fox and John Winta, who were the original creators back in 1950. And then I contributed 4 stories to that. And right now I'm currently working on CROM Anthology, which is a collection of collaborations, whether direct with me or with other artists with each other. Crom-centric is the best and most appropriate way. Not everything's going to be just about Crom, but the majority of it will be. And then some other sword and sorcery type stories. There will be some prose and illustrations that way and everything. But as I had mentioned to RJ, promotion is also that extra value that will be in there with double page artist spreads, helping people get directed to those artists if they find that's what flicks their switch, as well as promoting other Crom stories that are in publication with a little bit of a teaser, which having RJ be enthusiastic about that, definitely going to be keeping in contact with RJ about it. But I can't thank you enough, RJ, for taking the time, meeting with me, sharing where Crom the Destroyer is at and where it's going. But other than that, we'll let these people get back to reading comic books, making them if they choose.
Yep, it's one of the things I love about this space and the ability that we have right now to contact people all over the world. I get to share my passions with people and pull in a lot of very, very talented writers and artists and everybody else, colorists and inkers as well.
I can't agree with you more. So we'll leave it at that, and then we'll get back together in the near future.
Sounds good.
All right, take care.